Secondary scoring continues to be a nice find for the Minnesota Wild with Kirill Kaprizov out of the lineup. Unfortunately, defense and goaltending was a problem against Arizona. We'll recap the Coyotes game about the secondary scoring and look ahead to the week to come for the Minnesota Wild on today's episode of Locked on Wild.
You're Locked on Wild, your daily podcast on the Minnesota Wild. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Locked on Wild, your daily Minnesota Wild podcast, part of the Locked on Sports Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you, as always, for making Locked on Wild your first listen each and every day. Just a reminder, you can find Locked on Wild on all of your favorite podcast platforms, absolutely free of charge. On today's episode of Locked on Wild, Alex Micheletti joins us to recap the game against Arizona. We'll talk about some players starting to heat up for the Minnesota Wild and look ahead to what is to come this week, starting with St. Louis. My name is Seth Topal, your daily Minnesota Wild insider. We are joined, as mentioned, by Alex Micheletti. Unfortunately, not a victory Micheletti Monday, but we will take a Micheletti Monday regardless. Alex, a weird game against Arizona, oddly physical, and thanks to Joe Smith, who happens to be a night owl, I guess, like us, the Wild's 25-0-2 when having a lead after two periods. So one of those rare instances in which it wasn't the offense that caused the loss. It was the goaltending and the defense as well not being able to hold the lead.
A rare off night for Gus. You could say that there was defensive lapses, but he didn't let in some soft goals tonight. So he mentioned too that he went long stretches without shots, and that tends to happen against a team like Arizona. So you just have to be prepared for it. It's a crazy, weird environment. Smaller rink than every other rink in the National Hockey League, and they've been playing some really good hockey. They took Colorado to the brink the game before. They just got beat by Cale Makar, and he tends to do that against everybody. So, yeah, they had some phenomenal performances by a guy like Clayton Keller, who was their all-star. And, yeah, he just pots the game. So you could say it was a soft overtime winner. But the Wild also get a 13th game in a row with a point, so they'll take it because it was another crazy night in the NHL where Winnipeg and Calgary win and Nashville won in overtime late against Anaheim after they were up 4-2, and then Anaheim scored a couple goals. So yeah, it's just a crazy night in the NHL for sure.
That it is. And it was a weirdly physical night all night. You have Jack McBain punching Ryan Hartman in the face. You have just all sorts of scrums all over the ice, 4 fights. There probably should have been 2 more. And so it was just one of those weird instances where I don't know if it was frustration from Arizona being just bad like they have been for the last several years to where it finally boiled over, but it was chippy at Mullet Arena pretty much the entire game, and I think as the game wore on, that was something that Arizona used to their advantage.
Yeah, they feed off that kind of play, and you have guys like Lawton Krause, who's just a big dude, and Liam O'Brien, he just looks like a caveman out there. That fight, Marcus Foligno could have really hurt him even more. That could have gone really bad. You had Mason Shaw getting into a fight. So that was just craziness. Jack McBain, every time he gets to play against the Wild, he wants to try to beat them. So yeah, it's just one of those crazy games. And and you get both teams on a rare back-to-back, and so maybe tiredness and just all sorts of things that you normally wouldn't see on a typical night.
Yeah, it just I'm as frustrated as many are with the fact that the Wild didn't get the 2 points, but the main thing is that they did get the one. And Arizona, for all of their struggles all season, they are 17-11-3 at home. So Mullet Arena has proven to have a little bit of an advantage at home for the Coyotes. So all that considered, you get 1 point. It may have come at a price, though, as we'll talk about a little bit later. But I do want to dive into some of the secondary scoring. And let's give Denny some love here and talk about the fourth line, which played a pivotal role in this one. You had the Gordie Howe hat trick for Ryan Reeves. You had a gorgeous goal for Connor Dewar. You had Mason Shaw mixing it up. And I know it gets talked about a lot throughout the year, having that luxury of a fourth line that you can use as much as the Wild typically do. I think we're in a situation where until the offense starts to really consistently produce, you can probably lean on that fourth line a little bit more because it seems like those guys really have good chemistry.
They've been bringing a lot of energy. They had 6 combined points. When you get 2 points from even a guy like Ryan Reeves, you'll take that any day of the week. So, yeah, especially in the playoffs, if the Wild are fortunate to make, and it looks like they are, you're going to need to be able to roll all 4 lines to win a playoff series. So, when Dean can put those guys out there and trust them, that's huge for this team. And we've seen it time and time again. The past couple playoff appearances for the Wild, they just get stuck with one line producing, and that does not win you playoff games or series. And so, that's you take a look at a guy like Kevin Fiala. He gets paid, but you have to show up in the playoffs too. So we'll see if he can do that for the Kings, and we'll see if the Wild can do it finally this year. It's been their bugaboo. And hopefully, how the fourth line's been playing, they can help contribute to the playoff success of this team.
Those guys are rolling. And we'll talk about a couple of other players who are rolling. That, of course, Matt Zuccarello and Matt Boldy. When we come back, as we continue to turn the page from yesterday's game against Arizona to the week ahead. All that and more coming up on today's episode of Locked on Wild, after a word from our sponsors. Our next sponsor has a product that I use on an everyday basis. I started taking AG1 because it really helps you simplify your vitamin and supplement routine. All it takes, just 1 scoop of AG1, and you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food sourced superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. It fits any lifestyle, whether you eat keto, paleo, vegan, dairy-free, or gluten-free. AG1 is a small micro habit with big benefits. It's one thing you can do every single day to take great care of yourself. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. It's just 1 scoop in a cup of water every single day. That is it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NHL Network. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/NHL Network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. Continuing today's episode of Locked on Wild. Once again, thanks for making Locked on Wild your first listen each and every day. For your second listen, make sure you check out the Locked on NHL podcast to get the full lowdown on the playoff push for everybody that is fighting for a spot. In the Western Conference, that's fewer teams than in the East, but the East is also more settled. Either way, Locked on NHL, wherever you listen to your podcasts. Seth Topol joined by Alex Micheletti today. Alex, we saw another goal from Matt Boldy. Gorgeous breakaway move. I applauded the fact that the Wild did not try to go 5-hole on that breakaway. It seemed like that was a little bit of a strategy against Vejmelka. It seemed like the Wild were trying to shoot higher, and Boldy goes top right corner and gets that one to go. He had an empty netter. He's starting to get the goals to fall, and I think that's in no real. I think it's definitely related to the fact that that second line is just consistently putting themselves in positions to score some goals.
Yeah, credit where credit's due to Marcus Johansson. He's really developing chemistry with Matt Boldy, and Joel Eriksson is who he is. He's just always rock solid. He works his butt off on every single shift, and so they're going to need Matt Boldy to continue to score, even with Kirill back. You need multiple lines, especially a second scoring line to kick in there, and he can shoot it. He has to trust his shot, and there was just an amazing setup from John Klingberg too, who's been really polarizing since he's joined the Wild. We see it on socials. It's a roller coaster with him, but he was brought here for his offensive game. He was not brought here for his defensive, capabilities. He was here to run the point and add offense from the back end. And so far, he's done that, and so that was a crucial part of the game too. And just a great play by both guys there.
Just looking at a couple of the other things too, Matt Zuccarello with another goal. And if you want somebody to be kind of the leader of the bunch with Kirill Kaprizov on the shelf, Zuccarello has certainly stepped up and kept his production going, which is huge because you rely on that first line a lot. And in addition to getting the second line going, you want that first line to continue to do their thing. And those guys have.
Yeah, it's huge with Zuccarello because, he's known more as like the setup guy, kind of just like Panarin was in Chicago forever, and now with the Rangers too. And Zuccarello was a former Ranger as well. And with Kaprizov out, you're going to need somebody on that top line to shoot the puck. And so he's really stepped up the past couple of games scoring, and he's going to have to continue that. Sam Steele is what he is right now. I think he's just a placeholder. He's just what we call a jag, just a guy out there. And it's nice to see Ryan Hartman step up his play. He's just been phenomenal since he's been put back into that top line role. He brings physicality to that line and just some nastiness, some grit. And I've really liked the way that he's played. He's really cut down on penalties and trying to be a lot smarter out there. And it's led to some good results for that top line.
Just to add on to the top line, courtesy of Natural Stat Trick, I've got some stats. I'm trying to be a little more comfortable with stats. The top line, they had an expected goals against of 0.08 in 11 minutes. And so that is just phenomenal. Their Corsi 4 percentage was 78.57 when they were on the ice. And so those guys, they terrorized Arizona when they were out there on the ice. Johansson, Eriksson and Boldy, theirs was a little lower, but they still had some solid things that they did. The one that is interesting, considering that they scored 2 goals, was that the Corsi 4 percentage for the fourth line was under 50. I don't know. Numbers sometimes don't make sense, but keep the first line going, get the second line going. Third line is going to change now because I don't know what to expect from the Marcus Foligno injury situation, but it didn't look good. And so I would imagine somebody else will slot in there, probably Sammy Walker. Although I don't know. I don't know how the Wild handle this because you've got Johansson on that second line. And if you're going to look to put somebody on the third, maybe you move Johansson down and throw Walker in on that second line. I'm not sure what the right answer is to fill Foligno's spot with Sundqvist and Gaudreau, because that's been more of kind of your gritty defensive line. I don't know what the Wild will do depending on how long Foligno's out.
Yeah, well, it seems like, if he's healthy, Goudreau would work well with Sundqvist, and just add more grittiness to that line. I just love the way Sundqvist plays too. He's a unique character. He's kind of different for the Swedes that you see. He brings more of a grit. Lots of the Swedes aren't like him, so it's fun to see a different style from a Swede like him. And you just got to be careful with Duhaime too, because
Yes.
it seems like it's been multiple upper body head injuries for him. Maybe stop the fights for a little bit, just for his sake. But it just seems like, we debated, that, both of us thought that, Hansen should have been moved up to the top line there, but it seems like they're dead set on, trying to continue that chemistry with Boldy there. And I just don't know if you put Walker in the top six. I don't know how that can sustain. It might work for a game or two, but I guess keep Johansson where he's at right now, and then figure out, is Duhaime ready to go against the Blues or not.
It is a shame, because I feel like Duhaime and Sundqvist would be just beautiful chaos on the ice, because I didn't realize it until a replay, but Sundqvist put one of the Coyotes face first into the Arizona bench in retaliation for something. And so at that point I'm like, okay, this guy is going to be a fit here, I think. And you put those two on and they just do their thing, and then Steady Freddy as the center. I think that could be a line that could be a problem for people physically.
Yeah, I think it's huge for Freddie to not be in the top six there. You saw in the playoffs last year, he kind of just got overwhelmed being in the top six. So I think the third line is perfect for him. He's sound defensively. He can play with anybody we've seen, and yeah, just works to have some more grittiness on that third line. I would love to see that. And we hope the best for Foligno. He's had a really, really tough season with injuries, getting the puck to his knee, you name it. And so hopefully it's not as bad as it looked, because it looked like his ankle got smushed and stepped on. And he also had a weird play before that earlier in the game where I think Wes Walsh said he tore his breezers or something. I don't know what was going on there on the broadcast. That was an interesting moment. And we hope for the best for Marcus, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, that's really all we can do. And some interesting games coming up, because you have the world beaters on the schedule here this weekend. You've also got a familiar rival. And so to finish today's episode, we'll talk about the games coming up as we continue today's episode of Locked on Wilds after this. Are you looking for a delicious treat but don't want all the fat and calories? You have got to try Built Bar. What makes Built Bar so good? Well, for starters, they're covered in 100% real chocolate. They also come in some unbelievable flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, and coconut almond. And if those two checked boxes aren't enough, Built Bar is amazingly healthy. They contain just 130 calories and 4 grams of sugar with a whopping 17 grams of protein. Even better still is you no longer need to wait for your order to hit your doorstep. You can head to your local Walmart or Sam's Club to pick up a box of Built Bars today and get your Built Bar snacking started. If you don't have one handy, you can always head to Built.com, but whichever way you choose, make sure that you choose Built Bar today. Final segment of today's episode of Locked on Wild. Once again, thanks for making Locked on Wild your first listen each and every day. Seth Topal joined by Alex Micheletti. Let's take a look at the upcoming schedule for your Minnesota Wilds, as they next will play the St. Louis Blues on Wednesday. So a couple of days off for the Wild to just kick their feet up a little bit, practice. It sounds like they got a practice coming up before Wednesday's game. I think that will do some good. And you're taking on a St. Louis Blues team that got their faces caved in against Vegas. They continue to go in the wrong direction. They are 3-5-2 in their last 10. They lost their last game. They have given up 242 goals on the season. They have scored just 205. I say just. They've scored more goals than the Wild, but it's a Blues team that is a mess, but it's the Blues. And so that gives me pause because they've had some great success against this team, regardless of where they're at in the standings over the last 5 years.
It's such a weird team to figure out because they do have some talent on that team still. Jordan Kyrou, another year of 30-plus goals. Braden Shen, Torrey Krug, Justin Falk. The guy that's really brought them down this year is their goaltender, Jordan Binnington. He won them a Stanley Cup, but he's been awful this year. And so, I think that's had a lot to do with the demise of the Blues. And I think there's just been a disconnect with their head coach too, and Berube. And so, yeah, they have a lot of things to figure out. They had a weird deadline. They got rid of a lot of guys, and then they also picked up Vrana from Detroit, which was an interesting move. He scored against Vegas. So, yeah, it'll be interesting. They're just playing for pride right now. But as we know, if you can get a couple by Jordan Binnington, he just completely collapses. So that's what the Wild have to do. They have to score first, maybe try to get an early one. And then, the floodgates should open for the Wild. So, hopefully, they can continue the point streak, at least get the point and move on from St. Louis.
Yeah. Jordan Binnington has given up 15 goals in his last 4 starts, including the game against Vegas last night in which he gave up 4. Yeah, it's a mess. And they barely used Tomas Greiss, but that's also
who's horrible too. Yeah.
Tomas Greiss. So it's going to be Binnington on Wednesday. And personally, I'm hoping for just a meltdown game. Honestly, it'd be fun if we could get a goalie goal. Off of Binnington, Mike Smith style, where he's in the net and he just doesn't see the shot and it lasers past him. But I'll take a win at this point. And I think it'll be interesting because I wonder if, with how the season has gone so far, if the Blues try to put a little extra mustard on things, and also the Wild have as much motivation as they need for what's happened against the Blues over the last couple of seasons. But that's just the start of the week. You then have that back-to-back over the weekend in which the Wild will host the Washington Capitals, and they also will host the Boston Bruins. So a very interesting week because you have just the one game in the work week, the Wednesday night game at St. Louis, 8:30 tip. I love late tip. I love late tip-offs. And then you have 2 matinee games over the weekend against the Boston Bruins and the Washington Capitals.
Yeah, those those two upcoming on the weekend. It's interesting. Another Washington, tough team to figure out because they sold, but they also bought too, which so I don't understand them. And they have our old friend Darcy Kemper in that. So he'll be reared up and fired up to play up against the Wild. And then the Bruins, who are just destroying everybody, but they're also coming off a loss against Detroit. So we'll see how their week goes. And they're at 50+ wins, which is just insane for how hard this league is. Just to destroy everybody in their path is impressive. But there's also been the curse of the President Cup. So we'll see postseason if Boston can get through that war of the Eastern Conference for sure.
The thing that worries me about the Bruins is not necessarily their scoring, but it is the thing that could prove troublesome for the Wild as they currently exist in Linus Ullmark and the defense. So it's it'll be a fun game, but it's going to be one that the Wild are really going to have to dictate the pace. They're going to have to get some turnover opportunities, shorthanded opportunities, odd man rushes. They're going to have to manufacture some chances because Boston will limit what they're able to do. And so that should be just a fantastic game. I love that it's a 1:00 on a Saturday. It's getting you into that playoff mode for those early afternoon Stanley Cup playoff games that we so rarely see because we're always like the second or third game. But that should be fun. And then after that, congratulations, rest up after Sunday's game. Oh, and then, as we'll talk about next week, you get to go face the New Jersey Devils on the road.
Yeah, and a healthy Jack Hughes, who's just tearing things up again. So, yeah, and Vanacek had a shutout against the Hurricanes. So they're rolling. They're playing really good hockey. They get probably, I think, one of the biggest trade deadline accusations in Timo Meier. So that'll be a fun game, and of course, Dougie Hamilton doing his thing. So yeah, it'll be it's an interesting stretch of hockey for the Wild. It seems like all the teams around them just don't want to lose now again. So the Jets pick up a huge win against Tampa last night, and they come out of Florida beating the Panthers and the Lightning. So good stretch of hockey for the Jets. So watch out for the Jets again, I guess, right?
Yeah, the New York Jets, the world beaters that we always thought they were, and never doubted for a second. So we'll see what happens. We've said for the last while, I think it's going to come down to the wire, and that's why all those points that were banked so far this season are important, because until Kirill is back, you're probably gonna need him. So we'll see how things play out, but that will do it for today's episode of Locked On Wild. So now that your first listen of the day is done, again, make sure you check out the Locked On NHL podcast to get the full lowdown on everything going on throughout the NHL. Free and available wherever you listen to your podcasts. Just like Locked On Wild is, YouTube, your favorite podcast platforms, whether it be Spotify, Apple, Amazon Music, you name it, we are there. Also follow us on social media. We've got you covered every platform that exists. So make sure you don't miss out on anything we've got to offer as we guide you through the rest of the season. You can find new episodes every Monday through Friday as part of the Locked On Podcast Network.